مساء الخير واهلا بكم في مناقشة الشخصية. هنتكلم بالانجليزي وفي ترجمة بعد كده نفتح الباب للمناقشة. Okay. Thank you first of all for being here. This is unusual for such a I'm going to return to the movie, but first of all, I want to ask you a question about like, you were originally from Greece. So I think like part of your experience was sort of documented in many of your movies. Most of your movies are about Eastern Germany. There is the first one, November Child. There is West. There is the Tower, which takes place, which is about. So again, yeah.
Yeah, I was born in 1978 in East Germany, and I grew up in East Berlin, and clear memories. The situation, or the mental and the political situation of our country. We had big discussions, or my parents always would have big discussions almost every night. I hated that when I was a small child, because they would always talk about politics every day, every night, with their friends, with relatives. But I guess in that way it kind of got stuck to my DNA very, very early. And
you were aware when you left, you were conscious when you left.
Oh yeah, definitely, because even before, you just mentioned, I was 11 when this event happened. The wall came down and my family left from east to west. But many years before, I think when I was 6, I started realizing that I live in a country in the middle, because I grew up right next to the wall. My school, when I started going to school in first grade, was 200 meters next to the wall. I would play there every day. So soldiers, weapons, and the wall were part of my everyday life as a child. And of course you want to know, why is there a wall? Why can't we cross it? And I knew the story of my father when he tried to escape from east to west, and he went to jail for 1.5 years. And just before he met my mother in the 70s, he tried to escape a second time, but then fortunately he met my mom, so he stayed. And in the late 80s, my parents had an application to leave the country officially. Many people had that, and many people got rejected. And our application got accepted in the morning of 9th November, so the day where the wall came down later in the night. So as you can imagine, your childhood, in a way, ends way before you're 11, because it's so much part of your everyday life and your family's everyday life. And that's how it came to my films, because there's, of course, many stories that should be told about East and West. And I always felt like my perspective is something an audience might be interested in, because there's also very many bad films about this time.
But what's also interesting about your films is the vast majority, or this is how I see it. It's not about really life in the GDR, Lives of Others or whatever. It's more about that transitional period, just on the cusp of when you're about either when West, this family that immigrates to the West, or like this movie, or the Tower, which is about the final years or the final day of the GDR. You seem to be focusing more on that transition rather than actual lives there. Am I correct?
Yes and no. I mean, the films are all very different. Like The Tower is a film that I made that is based on a very popular German novel, and it's basically only about everyday life in East Germany in the last 7 years before the wall came down. And even in the film that you just saw, I tried to portray, even though it's funny and it's a bit over the top, I wanted to give the feeling that people from the East not only hated their country, They wanted to leave, they wanted the wall to fall down, but still they believed in a better socialism, and they didn't want the country to be united right away. They were dreaming of something else. They had a vision. They even had a vision with a better socialism, and this is what we sometimes forget nowadays. And even in our films, sometimes people feel or say that everybody was feeling bad in East Germany and everybody wanted to get out of the country, which is just not true. I mean, there were horrible things happening. We had a horrible secret police, and we had a horrible government, but still people had a normal life, and they were happy, and they had love, and they had families, and they were not as sad as maybe some other films or books give the impression. So I was always, and I'm still interested in the bigger universal subjects that hide behind our German history.
Let's talk about the movie for a bit. The natural question is why this particular moment? Why that evening?
It was not my idea to make the film. It was the idea of a German producer, and he asked my parents. My parents wrote the script, I had already done a few films about German history, and I was getting very tired of it. So when they asked me if I wanted to direct the film, I said, no, please leave me alone. Please give it to somebody else. I'm, full of this, and I can't see the uniforms anymore. I can't see the props anymore. I can't see the costumes, the jeans, the ugly hairstyles. I don't want to see that anymore. But then my parents gave me the script, and I felt very overwhelmed because it is one of the most important moments of history in the world in the last 30 years. And it gives this night, what happened in that night was so tragic and so funny, like very many events of the unrealistic just happened like this. Like the moment I told you while we were watching the film, where Harald, has the phone in his hand and is yelling at the officer from the, to the high politician, and he has the phone in his hand and screams, "Listen, what's going on here?" That just happened like this. So there were very many moments that I found just so fascinating and great for a film. And also it's a story that can give a lot of hope because it had a peaceful ending. And it had a peaceful ending because this one man had made the right choice. Maybe he had, I know this man personally because he helped me a lot with the film. I met him and he's still alive, and he's a person who defended this horrible wall for all his life, but then he had this clear moment, and I found it a very powerful, hopeful story. Plus, it's so linked to our family's biography because I was sleeping alone at home in that night. My parents were down there, and they were not allowed to come back in the first place. So they are like this couple that is the first ones. My parents were not the first ones to be allowed to go over. They were standing just there at Bornholmer Straße, and they belonged to the first people who were allowed to get out. They were among the first who were not allowed to get back. And I was sleeping at home at night alone. So, of course, when you have that in mind, and you get a script and you see the story, I felt it's also my story.
And just to clarify something I was asking earlier, that wasn't the night where the Berlin Wall fell. It happened afterwards, right?
The border, so it's a symbol. The Berlin Wall fell, not physically. The wall, it took weeks to make it disappear, but in this particular night, the wall was opened, the border was opened, and first, in this particular checkpoint, that was the one that was close to my home, and later in the night, after midnight, they would open all the other checkpoints in East Berlin.
Before we go to the next question, if anybody is around who can get us another microphone, that would be great. Thank you very much. Please, that would be mighty grateful. Anyhow, most of your movies are like very tense dramas, like thrillers and, you know, like very strong and, as I said, very stern. I'm not sure if this is your first comedy or not. Was it difficult? Again, and especially because it's a very special kind of comedy. It's not very subtle. It's very broad. It's almost like slapstick in some parts. And you know, like for a subject matter like that, you don't think it would work at the beginning, but it actually does. Especially like how it, like near the end, it darkens and it becomes more and more bittersweet and melancholic. Was it difficult? Why a comedy? How did you manage to sort of like sustain this tempo? Because it's very different. You could have easily like went into a farce and destroyed the whole thing.
When we started talking to the real Harald, we felt like the only way to tell the story is by making a comedy, because it was absurd. 16 people being alone with a few guns. They had to protect this, you know, this monster, this border, and within very, very few hours, it was like in the film, there was thousands of people, and these guys, they just didn't get any order. They were completely left alone, and Harald, who was by accident, by coincidence, the team leader of that night. It was not his profession to be the leader there every day, so it was like a coincidence. He was left alone by everybody, and then they started to quarrel in the barracks while more and more people came. Nobody would answer his phone calls. So that felt so tragic and so funny in a way, and what he gave us, all the details, so many details. I mean, special moments like the dog, that was reality. Not that night, but another night. So we basically took quite many stories that he would tell, put them together, but very many moments that you saw in the film that seemed very funny, they just happened like this.
So that's like the percentage of fiction and truth in the movie?
70% truth. Even the ambassador from Mozambique is the truth. I mean, of course, he didn't, you know, he didn't use his hand to calm Harald's stomach down, but the stomach is true. He had a sincere problem with his body, and he was waiting to go home that evening because he had this operation the next day. So even that is not fiction. And you know, if you get all these details, and if you meet Harald, you can't imagine, even though he was working for Secret Service, for Stasi, he was a very funny man, and he is a funny man. We got all those rich details that are just absurd.
Was it difficult making a comedy?
It was a challenge, and I tried to, in the films I did before, even though, like you say, they are darker, and they're more humor, and I realized it's something that I'm, you know, able to do. And I've always had the dream of making something that is more funny and more absurd. So I wouldn't say that it was difficult. It was, you know, I took a long time in the casting process and found actors who really understood and who come from the East. Most of them, like 80%, were born and raised in the East, so they kind of knew the special tone, and they knew, you know, there's always a certain humor in certain areas. I guess you have the same here. So I found the right people to understand it, and from the very beginning of the shooting, we kind of had a very, very funny time making this film, even though it was only shot during the night, which is very, very hard because it only, you know, there's no daylight in this film. So we would start shooting every day at 8 o'clock, and we would end every morning at 6. And this is something where you go crazy after a while, because, you know, your whole rhythm is so mixed up and messed up. But from the first day, I felt it can work, because we are having such a fun and great time making the film.
And you were telling me earlier that this movie is like one of your other movies written by your mother.
Yeah, it's written by my mother, and this time we, I mean, my mother is not a professional screenwriter. She just became one when I started with my film studies. I realized very early that I don't want to write scripts all by myself because I find it way too lonely and frustrating, and I needed somebody to share the frustration with. And I didn't find a student kind of, you know, felt right to work with. And my mother and I, we've always, my mother is a journalist like my father, and we always had a very strong bond, and they supported me very early with my art and with my career. And she was always the person I would talk to if I, you know, was in trouble with my short film scripts. And then at some point when I studied, we started writing a short film, and it worked out very well. And then we continued working. Now my mother is one of the most successful German screenwriters. She even works without me, but this was our fourth film together. And after working with a few other writers and my mother working for 2 other directors, now we will start working on a new project together. And my father, we took him to this project because he's a kind of a specialist for all the military questions that we had to face in this film. Like, he knew how a border is organized. It's very, very complicated because he had to learn all that because he wanted to escape. So when he wanted to escape, he had to do a lot of research, like how a border is structured and organized. And when he was in prison, he got to know a lot of the military, you know, the rankings and the orders. And so, because for my mom, I never was a soldier, and my mom either. So we needed a strong partner, and that was my dad. And it was a great cooperation.
I want to ask a couple of questions regarding journalism. One is the fact that this is a TV, essentially. Many, you know, not just like in the Arab world, just all over the world, they have misconceptions about the TV movies and the TV special. It has specific aesthetic rules, it has specific narratives and stuff like that. How is it different in Germany? How can the viewers try to create that misconception of what a TV movie is and what it should be?
I have to say I don't care about these rules. When I completed the film, we had a screening at Munich Film Festival, and I had 10 distributors for cinema coming up to speak to me and the producer and make offers because they wanted to release it in cinemas as an actually quite big release. The reason why it was not possible was that it was financed completely by one German TV channel, and it was the 25th anniversary of the fall of the wall. They had already programmed it, and so they didn't want to give the fame to a cinema distributor. But I would not have done this film differently if it was for cinema directly. So there are probably a few rules, and like in Germany, we have a lot of crime stories that are being made for television only. I mean, the whole German television is full of crime. Whenever you switch on the telly, you will find 2 or 3 crime films. But I never follow the rules in a way. Maybe something that I mean, this is very specific, but maybe I'm very aware that if I work for television, the first 5-10 minutes should be something, should have some very catchy ingredients so people just stay. It's different in the movie theater where if you pay a ticket, then you probably won't leave after 10 minutes. It's different on television.
There's also that criticism, again, I'm just going to get into that as advocate for a second, that one of the major problems with modern German cinema is the fact that it's stuck in the past. That many of the movies that do make it go screen or otherwise, this is no different. That either with the GDR or the Nazi era, there's a scene of the war that actually makes fun of that. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I think it's obvious that especially the young filmmakers still have to raise questions that relate to our history. I feel very sorry for the audience that very many of the films that we make are boring and raise the same questions again and again, especially films about the Nazi era. 80% portray German heroes that were not Nazis. So we give we try to give some sort of relief, and you can say, I did just the same with this film, which I would probably disagree. But there's many reasons. We have a very big industry, but it's in a way it's ruled by television. That's maybe one of the main reasons that the German television give most of the money to the films, and they also try to have an influence, and they don't risk they don't risk too much, and they don't encourage young filmmakers to take risks and make films that are wild and go deeper. But it would take a whole night to discuss this, because we are suffering a lot as German filmmakers. But I'm very positive that in the next couple of years you will get some great new German cinema.
My final question before we open up the door for the expression. I think one of the distinctive things about your movies in general, how we try to humanize the characters that are coming from Geneva. In many of the movies you see about that period, there is full of caricatures. There is bad guys, or there is the good guys or bad guys. There is almost no shade of gray, which I find that unbelievable. As I was saying, one of the interesting things about your movies is I think that was especially very stressed on the West, about the fact that there is lots of shades of gray. There's so many unanswered questions. There are lots of doubts. That it wasn't so black and white as movies made it seem to be. How important was that for you? How, as I was saying, how important was it to give fully rounded picture of characters in there?
Very important. I mean, that's my strongest motivation to give new perspectives. And what I find most boring is making films that repeat reflections or repeat ideas that the audience already has. And this is something that we do a lot in Germany, that we repeat again and again. That's why you were saying that the German cinema is stuck in the past, because we are very afraid of finding new perspectives, and this is something that really drives me. And even this film was a big provocation. The people who were responsible for the film, they tried to be brave, and at the same time we had to calm them down, because they were really afraid that the audience would not be able to cope with the fact that our main heroes, or the main protagonists, are from the Secret Service, from Stasi, who was responsible for so many bad things.
Or not bad guys.
No, of course not, because you don't understand a regime like we had in East Germany if you make all the people who are responsible make only appear as bad guys. You don't understand anything. I mean, there were 7 million people living in East, and it didn't just contain of bad guys, good guys, people from the state and people from the public. It's like you said, there's far more shades, and it's far more complicated and complex.
مساء الخير، أنا اسمي أنس صلاح الدين، جاي بحضر اسبوع افلام جوته السنه دي. النهارده رابع يوم. اشتغل النهارده بفيلم الماني وفيلمين المانيين، واحد كان فيتشر واحد كان دوكيومنتري، والمخرج كرستين موجود معانا. مخرج الفيلم الاول كان موجود وكان عمل ديسكشن كانت شغاله من شويه. الاسبوع لغايه دلوقتي يعني شغال، التنظيم كويس الى حد كبير، ما عدا بس اول يومين تقريبا كان المفروض اول فيلم يبدا 6 الصبح، و6 الصبح الشمس ما كانتش لسه نزلت، فدي كانت عامله مشكله شويه. بعد كده حلوها وجابوا خيمه، فالموضوع بقى لطيف. كان في برضو شوية مشاكل في الصوت في كام فيلم، بس بعد كده الموضوع ده اتحل يعني بسرعة. الأفلام اللي بتتعرض لغاية دلوقتي لطيفة جدا. يمكن أحسن فيلم كان اتعرض امبارح ده كان فيلم ألماني اسمه فريشتات، بيتكلم يعني عن ولد أهله نقلوه يعيش في الكنيسة وهناك بيتعذب وكده، فالفيلم كان حلو جدا. وبرضو الفيلم بتاع النهارده كان بيتكلم عن الجدار الألماني يوم ما سقط، العزل بين ألمانيا الشرقية وألمانيا الغربية. ده برضو كان فيلم حلو جدا، وكان المخرج يعني نقله بطريقة كويسة ومختلفة عن أي فيلم تاني. بس كده تمام.
Yeah, this is the first time that I come to Cairo, the first time in Egypt, and it was a great short visit. The city is crazy. I find it's a very vibrant, it's a very lively city, and I didn't get to see very much, but I'll definitely come back and experience it more. I met very many very interested people, and of course Cairo is a city full of history, and I was fascinated to meet people and talk about their recent history, and who are so passionate about films and also passionate about German films. The screening here tonight was very emotional because I had many conversations with people who kind of could relate because of your Egyptian history, of your younger history, because of the revolution, could relate to what happened in East Germany around the time when the wall came down. So I'm a very happy man tonight after these 24 hours visiting the film week here at Goethe Institute and visiting your country.
What about Goethe Institute week, film week? They bring German cinema to Cairo. So what's your impression about to see German movie in Cairo, or your German film in Cairo, and what about the
I was very happy to be invited to this special film week here at Goethe Institute, and I was curious. I didn't know how many people would come, and then I was amazed how full the screening was, and how patient people would watch the film, and how warm my welcoming was, and how warm the reactions towards my film. And I talked to very many people here at Goethe Institute in the Q&A, and also I talked to people from a German class, or actually from 3 German classes, and we had a very deep conversation about your country and about my country, and about similarities and differences, and we felt very close to each other, even though it was not for very long that we spoke. But for me, as a filmmaker, it's always great to show my films in Germany to a German audience, but it's even more special to come to foreign countries and get to know people there, and how they react to my films that mostly portray German history. So I'm really happy that I got the gift of experiencing the Egypt audience.
What about your workshop for High Institute Cinema in Egypt, the student?
Working with the students from the Cinema Institute was great because they were very curious, they were very open, and we talked for a couple of hours, and then we started, just spontaneously to make some practice, and we made some exercises, and we talked a lot. And I really hope that it was a great day for the students. It was great for me, and I will definitely come back if I got invited another time.
Welcome.